Dunna did it. Boss, maybe? What do I call you today? The landscape and precedent for YouTube creators to hire video editors is in its infancy at best. Calling it the Wild West might be generous. So in today's episode, I asked if Dunna, who if you didn't know is someone I have worked with extensively as an editor, would come on the show today to talk about all things regarding our working relationship, how we got together to work together in the first place, and just all things YouTube creator, editor, shop. Guys, this video is jam-packed with all kinds of insightful things. I think if you're an aspiring YouTube editor, you definitely do not want to miss this one. Favorite NLE?
Resolve.
Favorite editing snack?
Bell Soy chocolate pudding.
Okay. Do you prefer to edit sitting or standing?
Sitting.
Do you have a favorite sound effect?
So there's this paper rustle one that I use. That's my favorite. It just I use it when I slide a paper background on the screen.
Yes. Okay. That would have been my guess, but I was curious if I was right. One monitor or two monitors when editing?
I'm a dual monitor, but vertical, like sitting on top of each other. I mean, you can see it in the background.
Mac or PC?
I have not used a PC in over 20 years.
Vertical video, yay or nay?
Yay. That's complicated, but yay is the short answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Zoom lens or prime lens?
Zoom lens.
All right. Hey, that's all I had for rapid fire. Again, taking some mental notes. We'll circle back to some of those, I think. Maybe real quick before we get into the weeds. I would hope that everyone here knows who you are because, again, I've talked about you. I'm assuming they knew about you before they knew about me, whatever. But maybe give the people in the odd chance that they're not aware of you, who you are, what you do, and then we can kind of dive into, I think that relationship is going to be really interesting. So
yeah. So, I mean, my name is Dunna, but it's not really Dunna. But if you want to know my real name, you can message me. And my channel is called Dunna Did It, which originally started because I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. So I thought if I called it Dunna Did It, then anything I do is fair game. But then what happened is I eventually got really nerdy about cameras. And so now my channel exists to be nerdy about cameras. I do reviews on camera gear that's coming out, try and help people decide what they should be buying. Then once they've bought it, I do tutorials on how to use it, basically how to take better photos and videos. And I'm just really passionate about learning the world of photography and videography. And so that's what I make videos about. And so, yeah, I'm primarily kind of a YouTube and Instagram social media content creator. And yeah, that's me.
And you're underselling it. Dunna's a legend. Truly, if you haven't heard of him or learned 1,000 amazing things from Dunna, you go study up. And also too, I mean, just personally speaking, as someone who's worked with you, I've always been so impressed that you don't have formal training, at least that you've told me, in this space, but just the way you compose, your colors, everything always looks so incredible. So, I mean, it's just a true testament, and you're one of those awesome examples of you can be so good if you just are passionate about something. And I love that. I love that.
YouTube University. That's where I went.
Yeah. And it's the best. It's the best one out there. Yeah. And I don't know if we want to go too far off into the weeds too, but I think it's kind of relevant, and there's probably some stuff that I may want to hit. I mean, you were doing actual professional music production before you even got into cameras. So that was kind of your first big thing.
I have lots and lots of formal training in music and recording and composition and that kind of stuff.
And you got your degree in that, right? I'm trying to remember.
It's a diploma. So if for those of the people who aren't Canadian, that's a 2-year, or you guys might call it an associate degree in the States, but it's a 2-year kind of half degree type thing. So I have one of those in recording, one in drum performance, and one in music composition. So I've got 3 of them. Lots of fancy pieces of paper that tell me I'm a musician.
Yeah. Dang, that's super cool. Yeah, I couldn't remember the technical accreditation, but
Yeah.
very cool. No, I don't know. Again, we'll see where we go today, but I mean, obviously that's a huge passion of mine, and we kind of have a similar story there, except for I YouTube University for everything I've done in that realm as well. So I love asking you questions because you always know the right answers to things that I'm like, well, I think this is kind of how you're supposed to do it from what I've learned on the internet. But yeah, before we go into any of that, I think today, again, I really want to just start on talking about the editor, YouTuber, like dynamic. Again, I'm so fascinated by this, and I keep trying to dig up other people to have on this show to talk about this because I think it's so cool. But I just think that like you and I's relationship, how we got started, YouTube editing is just something that I can't find enough information on. And I think a lot of people are interested in it. And I think really to kick us off, I think the people would probably just be curious to know, like, why did you even come looking for me in the first place? Maybe walk us through that to begin with.
Yeah. Well, I guess for a little piece of context, in case people don't know, Jake has been editing for me for, I don't know, like probably six months now, 8 months, something like that. And it was like, it's been kind of like in certain situations, it's been like every video that I was putting out. And then sometimes I was taking some of it back myself. And more recently, my stuff has been all over the place. So I just kind of do it. But yeah, so that's for the context for the people. That's what you're talking about there. And so, I mean, for me, it was really just kind of an experiment with necessity to see if I could delegate a little bit of the workload was really what it came down to. And I think you and I found out really quick that editing maybe wasn't the first place I should have been looking for
Yes.
for outside help and that kind of stuff, because like that's part of the job that I actually do really enjoy.
Yeah.
And also I'm like really like nitpicky about certain things, and so I ended up doing a lot of like last minute changes and that kind of stuff, and we found a really good flow for that, which was awesome. But yeah, so I think the start of it was just I have too much on my plate now.
Yep.
Because things are going well, I've got too much going on. I want to be doing more short form, I want to be doing more long form, I want to be doing a little bit more of everything, and I was at a plateau where I couldn't physically do any more than what I was already doing without collapsing at the end of every week. And so then the kind of default that you hear about with content creators is like, then you hire an editor. And so I was like, I'm going to go looking for an editor. And then I came across Jakey Wakey here, and we became fast friends for sure. Like I said earlier, our meetings are supposed to be meetings, and they end up just being us shooting the shit for several hours. And yeah, if we had any like boss or corporate overlords, we would be just absolutely fired for how much time we waste in our meetings. Big in
time.
our meetings. Yeah, absolutely. I got an email from the algorithm that said it wasn't pleased with us. I was like, that's my boss, is the algorithm.
And I think that that's a really interesting point. Well, okay, there's two big things from the spiel you just gave that I want to jump off on. But I think one thing that you and I learned super quickly, and I would definitely tell anyone, is like, editing is a very technical job. It's very time consuming, and like there's definitely a level of you need to have someone competent doing it. But like we discovered, man, it's just like another relationship in your life. And like almost I would tell anyone, especially like whether you're the editor or the client, like you got to enjoy working with this person, because you need to want to talk with them, you need to want to work with them. And I would say, like, if you're having a hard time finding that, keep looking, or maybe self-reflect on like, am I hard to work with, or whatever the case is, because that's something that always stood out with our relationship. Is again, it's like it's almost too friendly sometimes, maybe to our detriment, where it's just like we just get along really well, and that's super important, I think. But
Yeah, yeah, and we started it off that way too. Like I feel like as I was looking for an editor, I was looking for someone. I knew that communication was going to be a huge part of it, and so like everybody that was in my kind of final picks were all great editors. Like I probably could have worked with any of them, and that was fine. But like in our kind of final interview process, you and I felt so smooth in the communication of things that it just seemed like that was going to take the opportunity for what we could accomplish to the next level. Because if you can trust someone with the technical aspects, I think there are lots of people out there that you can do that with. Like lots of people are just as good editors as I am or better than I am, but then it's about communicating the vision and the style and that kind of stuff. And if you don't have that kind of like communication, that smooth communication, then it can become difficult. It can put blocks up that the technical stuff can't fix, you know?
Oh, for sure. Well, and I take a huge amount of pride in just my outlook on working for people. And I would say even in you and I's relationship, like even one of my strengths was constantly put to the test, which is just like, hey, here's how I think I would want to do this. And then you would come back and be like, well, no, Jake, I really want it this way. And it's like, okay, like I have to swallow my ego here, swallow my pride and do it how Dunna wants to do it, because that's the gig. And it's like you have to be able to do that. You can't be someone that immediately throws up the barriers and like kind of digs its heels in. And again, even I struggled with that, but I would just say like that was a huge learning lesson with our relationship. Is like that is so important. Always focus on that. And I've talked about it before on my channel too, and I'm curious if you feel the same way, but it's like if you are someone who does value creativity or creation, like working as an editor is awesome and there's lots of creative choices, but you may have to have another outlet to like fully explode that muscle.
That's the only reason I own a camera.
Yeah.
Right now. I mean, going back to my life in music, that was like I essentially lived what you were just talking about. Like I was a music producer. I owned a recording studio. People would show up, they put their money on the table, they tell me what they want me to make, and it was creative. I know you've talked about this before. It was a creative thing to do, but at the end of the day, the client got to tell me what they wanted, right? And if like you said, like maybe you're like, I would like to do it this way. They come in and they're like, I want a country song. And I'm like, okay, we should probably hire a fiddle. And they're like, you know what? Actually, I think it would be better if it was a banjo. And I'm like, I don't know this song. And you try and communicate in a way where like maybe you can try and convince them, but you also don't want to cross any lines of like pissing them off because you're like being too pushy or whatever. Like it's their record, it's not yours. And so I feel like editors are very similar in that way, or anyone who's not at the top of the pyramid for any project, any kind of creative project. It's like you get to be creative, but it's still not your baby, right? And so then coming out of music, that was literally why I picked up a camera, was because I was like, okay, I wanna still enjoy doing music, but at the end of a 10-hour day of working for other people, I didn't want to sit down and make my own music. I felt like I needed something else that was creative, and that's where the photo video stuff came, because it was just for me. And that's one of the beauties of being a solo YouTuber, is that there is no client to answer to. And in the world of like sponsorships and that being a big part of my income, those people are coming to me because they want me to do more of what I've already been doing. So then like I get to put a sponsorship in a video that I already wanted to make. It's never, or very, very little of it is like somebody being like, hey, you need to make this video, here's a bunch of money, which is like the kind of client-based approach, which like tons of people do. And if you love it, that's great. But like I've turned my passion into my job twice now.
Yep.
So like once with music and once with photo and video stuff. And this version of it sits way better with me. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying. And I feel like I learned a lot from when we started working together too, in that all of those little minute details that you're saying, like, maybe I would have done it this way, and I'm like, no, this is important to me, we need to do it this way. I don't think I knew those existed, because when you're like a solo creator and you're doing all that, it's just kind of happening in your head, and you do it that way the first time instinctually.
Yeah.
You don't think that there is another option for the way that someone else. I mean, obviously we understand that there are other creative styles and that kind of stuff, but like it's so instinctual that like learning to even have to communicate those things was such a learning curve working with somebody else on my team. And you were the first person. I've had a couple of people come out and like camera op for me a couple of times, but like that is like generally pretty straightforward, and like they're just like a I hate to say it, but they're very similar to the way that my tripod works when I go to work by myself, kind of thing. Like, right. I'm like, hey, stand over there and get this shot, which is like, and as long as they're competent, like they're going to do that, and they do a great job. And it does allow for more variety in my work, and I've really appreciated the extra help that they the extra things that they do that are better than my tripod. But the communication is so much easier there. When it comes down to the editing, it's like there's so much to say, and so yeah, it was definitely a learning curve for me. I'm sure you remember some of my like. Oh yeah. Stress around that and not being able to like figure it out right away, and like it was a whole new thing to learn how to do.
Yeah. And I think that again, in that realm, a big piece of advice I would give, and I think you were, even though there were so many challenges, I think one thing that you and I found was just like your patience was huge, and that's super important. Like, I think, again, I've had a lot of different experiences, but I think sometimes you get hired as an editor and just kind of, the client wants something a very specific way super quickly. And I don't know, again, maybe I haven't had enough experience. Maybe I need to work some more gigs, but I just think that it is like such a complex relationship that you have to go, depending on what you want and what level you're asking for, like you got to be ready to sink some time into that back and forth. And again, that is all hinging on the fact that this editor you've hired is willing to do that in the first place, right? So it is, I don't know. We learned a ton. I thought it was crazy valuable. Anytime I work for anyone, it's always valuable, but working for you has been just like so good for so many different pieces of what this process entails. So
yeah, man. Yeah. It's there's a lot to working with other people, especially if you're used to working by yourself a lot. Like there's so much that goes on there that I had very little idea. Because even when I was a music producer, it was like I was doing everything. Like if you hear any of the stuff that I was on, like any of the stuff that I produced, I played every instrument. Like there wasn't a lot of like hiring musicians and having to work with them and communicate with them. It was like I just kind of did everything. So I'm literally a one-man band.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I real quick, I feel like I just talked about the people that come out and help me and called them tripods, and I value you. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean that in a negative way.
No, I didn't.
I love you, Adam, Tyler. You guys are amazing. Don't take that the wrong way. I was just trying to get a big idea out in a short amount of time.
DUNNA exposed, calling people tripods. Canceled. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Where was I even going after that one?
I don't know. I feel like I was like, I have to apologize. Maybe that's like just very Canadian of me. I like said something and then like immediately felt like I was like, I need to apologize about that. I didn't mean it to come across that way.
Having worked with you, I will to anyone who watches DUNNA, it's not an act. DUNNA is almost obnoxiously nice. I will be the first to say it. So don't get any ideas here.
I should have put that in my Instagram bio, just like obnoxiously nice.
Yeah, like for the rest of us mortals, quotes, it's Jake. Frustrating. It's like, dang it, I'll never be as nice as DUNNA.
Oh man.
One thing I did want to talk about that I think people will be interested in is we pretty early on were big adopters of the DaVinci Resolve cloud features. And I'm trying to decide if there's really too much to say here, but I think it's pretty cool that we did that in the first place, because I kind of always looked at that functionality coming out and just thought, that's cool. You know, would I ever use it? I don't know. And you were like, we should try this. I was like, okay, let's try it. And then B, just kind of like what that experience was like for us, and maybe how we implemented it. And I don't know, is there anything you want to kick us off with there?
I do think we implemented it in a bit of an interesting way comparatively to the way that, I don't want to say that it's designed, because I think it is designed the way that we used it, but like, I think if you're a team and you have an editor and a colorist and maybe a sound person who's mixing the sound or whatever, it works really smoothly in that way, where because you can be coloring the same timeline as the person who's editing it, like as they're editing it. Whereas with you and I was still doing some of the editing. I mean, it was mostly that I was taking over, I was doing color and sound, and you were doing most of the editing. But it was so nice to be able to hop in while you're in bed or whatever, like you're off or you're at work or whatever, and I can pick up the project and make some little tweaks or go through and make notes inside the project. And the nice thing about that, like kind of going back to the communication, the balance that I struggled the most with working with an editor is that, like, that communication, all of a sudden it was taking me where it maybe would have taken me 8 hours to edit a video. It was now taking me 3 to 5 hours to communicate, you know, throughout a week, like in little bursts. It was taking me 3 to 5 hours to communicate what I wanted. And so then, and that doesn't necessarily feel productive. Like writing down, here's what I want. And this is like, just obviously it is productive, but it doesn't feel like you don't see anything at the end of a session of like writing down notes for your editor.
No.
Right. So then I really struggled with that, like trying to balance those things and realizing that at the end of the week or whatever, I did technically save, let's say, 3 hours of time because I only spent 5 hours communicating instead of 8 hours editing.
Yep.
But like those 5 hours felt so unproductive when you're used to just like straight from the brain to the product kind of thing. And now there's that middleman. And then obviously like you and I work on different schedules and stuff. So I think going back to DaVinci Resolve in that case and the cloud features, it was so nice once we did find our flow for me to get to decide which things were worth communicating and which things were just like, it's going to take me longer to write that out than it is for me to just like drop that clip on and do it myself. And so then we struggled with a balance on that for a long time because especially initially I wanted to give you the opportunity to like learn my style and stuff. And if I was constantly hopping in and just doing stuff myself, it was going to take that process was just going to take longer. And so I think like a month in, we both kind of had this thing where we're like, okay, Dunna, I know this is easier, but like, you got to give me a chance to like actually get through a whole project. And we were like, okay, let's do that. And I just like bit my nails for a month while we tried that. And then once we figured that out, we got to dial it back. And obviously after that period of time, there was more, the projects were coming closer and closer to being done by the time you got me back the first draft. Like you were getting it at that point. You were starting to learn my style and the little itsy bitsy things that I wanted in there and the difference between whatever, like a 10 frame slide in and a 12 frame slide in or whatever, like those little things that I wanted for whatever reason. But I will admit, it was really nice to have the option to just fix something myself. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think like if you're working with an editor that, let's say, works in a different piece of software, and I know that this was something that because you wanted to do some stuff on Final Cut too. And I pushed back pretty hard because that was such an important part. And especially on the schedules, right? Because like if I have to make a note, you send, let's say I wake up in the morning, I go to work, I see that there's a new version for me to check over and make notes.
Yep.
Then I have to send the notes to you. And if you, let's say you've got other projects going on that day, you're hanging out with your family that day, I'm just stuck in limbo for that day.
Right.
Right. And
Yes.
so then the next morning, I'm like hoping that you got some time that night to like take care of the notes, but maybe not.
Yeah.
Whereas in Resolve Cloud that day, if I was like, oh, Jake's busy today, I'll do these notes, right? Like I don't even need to make the notes. I can just hop in. Jake told me he's busy. And so I think that was a really strong part of our workflow. Especially knowing that I still wanted to be involved in the edit and that I could, right? Because I feel like we did have some similarities in the way that we approach things.
Yes.
Other than that you like magnetic timeline, and that's weird.
Well, don't worry. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into that. I do want to rewind for just a hot second because I feel like we didn't touch on this, which you've
talked
been
a lot.
No, you're good. You're good. You've been beating around the bush, but I think it is probably important because I kicked us off with the cloud thing, but the way we operated, I do think is really important for context, which is, again, I moonlight as an editor. Like I've got another job, but you would work during the day. So the way that the cloud thing was so nice, which again, you kind of hinted at, I'm just trying to get it concrete here, was you would work during the day, upload files, whatever, do your stuff. And then at night I would edit. And because it was all in DaVinci Cloud, basically you just had to get it all there. You could work on stuff if you wanted to, whatever. And then I could just open it up, when I was doing my working time and do what I needed to do for the edit, whether that was starting it or, again, the nice thing about the cloud that was so cool was like you could put markers on the timeline. So like we didn't have to use Frame.io. We didn't have to use any of these other tools. Like we could just be all in DaVinci Resolve. You could have other timelines with examples. I mean, like that really was a pretty smooth process. Because I think a lot of people, when I talk about it, they hear it and go, oh, you guys were like editing together. And it's like, no, it was just kind of a really good place to have everything and not have to worry about being out of sync with different schedules. So yeah, everything you said totally fits in with that. But
yeah,
again, we weren't really doing it at the same time almost ever. But I think it was still a great solution for that, even though that's kind of not what it's designed for.
Totally. And I mean, that's the other thing too. And I kind of just barely touched on that before is like, I could be coloring something that you're editing, or I could be working on the audio while you're editing it, but I can't edit it while you're editing it. Like you can't open the same timeline and be editing at the same time. So, I mean, unless I'm sure there were situations where I was working on one timeline, like if there was like every once in a while in my videos, I have those like example videos where it's like, here's a 2-minute sequence that I shot all on this one lens or something like that. So maybe we were editing at the same time where you were working on the talking head part and I was tweaking that, but like, I don't know that ever really happened partially because you can't really be editing at the same time. And partially because that would just be like stepping on each other's toes. Too many cooks in the kitchen that would be confusing to have more than one person in a timeline at any given time. Unless, again, they were doing separate jobs. Like if I was just coloring and... I mean, that might get confusing for you too. Just you're editing away and all of a sudden like a clip is no longer in log and it's like all of a sudden all color graded.
Yeah.
You're like, did I do something?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
The one thing that I didn't really like is the chat feature.
Yeah. I wish it persisted because it never persisted, right? It always went away. So I feel like I wanted to use it, but then it's like, as soon as I close this, it goes away and I can't. Because that injunction with markers could have been amazing. Because I feel like there was a lot of gaps, with texting that we had to do where it's like, hey, this marker at this point, or maybe just like a general note. It's like, where do you stick a marker for that? Which we started coming up with colors. We got pretty creative, but that chat feature being, look at us. I was trying to think of some bad things about DaVinci, and there's one that we hit. I will say too, and I think we had kind of talked about it, and I was curious your experience. I've always been really confused because, well, it's definitely buggier than the local version, which doesn't totally surprise me. It's newer. But then like I always felt like there was a little bit more lag, which I never understood because it is all local and it's just syncing the project file to the cloud, which I guess maybe that created the lag. I don't know. Did you notice that?
My understanding of it is that the project file exists on the cloud. So all the like instructions, and obviously like project files are tiny little files. They're like kilobytes, right? Like they're tiny, but the instructions, all of the instructions for what a timeline looks like and all that kind of stuff exists on that. And so that's where I assume the lag comes from, is just that it's not a local file. I think anyway.
And it probably has to be that way, because
I think so.
If you're going to do collaborative, there needs to be kind of one source of truth, which again, It's like, I almost wish there was an option where we could be like, hey, we know we've got different working hours. Can we have a local DRP file that then gets pushed in the background, but give me the snappiness in the moment? Because again, I don't have great internet. So I was always kind of feeling it where it's like, man, like my playhead shouldn't be slow because all of the files themselves that I'm editing are duplicated onto my local drive, but it still just feels not quite as snappy as
there's a whatever else. It's not the files that are slow because those are local, but it's whatever else it has to go on in the background to run that project file, I think is where it starts to run into issues. And one of the reasons why I made that hypothesis is because when I'm in my studio, my laptop is plugged directly in, like I've got Ethernet going into it. And then I would be like at home and I would want to touch something up and it would be like slower because I'm just on my Wi-Fi. And then I would like be in a hotel and it would be like inoperable because of like crappy hotel Wi-Fi kind of thing. And so that was always kind of like a funny thing. And I learned that anytime I was going traveling, if we were working on something together and it was at the point where maybe I was putting on finishing touches, I would export the DRP and pull it into my local thing, and then I could work on it while I was traveling.
No, and that's what I was trying to remember if you had the same issue. And again, having worked in software, I feel like there should be a way where you could configure something to like have those preferences where it's like, hey, I know I'm not going to have a lot of these saving conflicts. Give me the speed. And that was kind of a big detractor at times for me, where it's just like, I love it to feel smooth. That like nothing takes me faster out of an edit than dealing with laggy garbage, which is why I love Resolve in general, because it's really good at that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got to the point where when we were working on certain projects together, but not other ones, I was like batch filming and like I would give you one to do while I was editing another one or whatever. I would start the edit if I wasn't sure yet, like I filmed something and I was like, I don't know what Jake's schedule looks like. I don't know when I want this out, but I need to like compile footage and just like see what it is that I shot. I would always start it on local. And I didn't, when we started working together, I would just start it in the cloud and then I could just be like, hey, there's this file in there, like you can go check it out. But eventually I moved over to starting everything local. And then if I decided that it was like, okay, I need Jake to work on this one, I would then export that, upload it. And it would be, that's another thing actually that I feel like I wish Resolve would add, is just a way to be like, move to cloud.
Yes.
Move project to cloud or whatever. Like that would be, if you could move projects a little bit easier between catalogs, because it's really just another catalog, right? It's just one that exists on a hard drive somewhere in, I don't know where their hard drive, their servers are or whatever. Yeah, Seattle or something
Texas,
like that.
Who knows?
Yeah, so it's like, I feel like there could be an easier way to move projects between catalogs. I mean, not that it's like a huge pain to like export, import, like it takes you 4 minutes, but yeah,
I'm sure. I don't know. And again, it's fun to kind of talk about this stuff because it is one of the few companies today where it's like you put this feedback out there and like, it seems like they listen. Like it's pretty bananas just how much stuff we keep getting in the DaVinci landscape. It's pretty crazy, which I don't know if we want to dive into that or if you feel passionately about that, but I'm trying to think is there anything else on like the working side relationship we want to cover before maybe we start getting on our hot takes with NLEs and editing and getting real spicy?
I mean, I had nothing in mind coming into this. I assumed we were just going to go off on a tangent, and you probably wouldn't have anything to put together by the end anyway. So
It's looking possible. But
I thought this was just going to be like one of our meetings where we didn't actually do what we were supposed to do, and we just shoot the shit the whole time and forget to actually do the important thing. So I feel like we've done really well so far.
First time
we've got lots of information.
Yeah. Exclusive
First time
uploaded meeting of Dunna and Jake. Yeah, okay. Well, let's try to maybe put a little bit of a bow on that, because again, I think we've covered a lot of good stuff. But I mean, just is there any sort of big takeaways otherwise from what you and I did, how we operated, things that you would maybe recommend, especially from, I'm always giving my opinions from the editing side, but as someone looking for an editor, is there any other things you'd want to hit people with just to recommend or look for?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the understanding that the communication is the job is really tough. Like, people always say, like, hire an editor that's better than you are, kind of thing. But if like you're a competent editor, like, that becomes very difficult. Like, if and not that I'm saying that like I'm the best editor in the world, but like I think I'm pretty good, and I'm really good at what it is that I want.
You're good.
So then
I give you approval to say you're good.
the job then becomes figuring out how to communicate that. So you are not just like handing something off to somebody. You are hiring someone to do that job and creating a second job where you have to then learn how to communicate what it is that you want. And so just something to keep in mind when you're looking for somebody. And I think that I feel like I made the right choice in that I, going into the process, chose the person that I felt I communicated the smoothest with. I picked like 5 people that I was like, hey, these are obviously like technically sound editors, like they can all get the job done. And then I picked the person that I thought I had the best communication with. And that was 100% the right decision, especially coming back to the fact that, like I said, that for me, that communication felt like it was like almost being unproductive. And so then I really had to wrestle with that for a long time to kind of like logic it out and take all the like emotions off the table. And then other than that, I mean, like trying to find a workflow. Like, you and I worked a lot on experimenting with our workflow to make it work for the fact that you're moonlighting, like for the fact that there are certain tools in certain pieces of software that maybe don't exist in other pieces of software that Jake is very used to using, and that makes things a little bit difficult. Maybe we can talk about that in a little more detail later.
I feel so bad too, because I feel like the new version of that has been fixed for me, but we'll talk about it.
Yeah. This video is now sponsored by Magic Animate version 3. Jake, what is your pack version called?
The Jakey Baby.
The Jakey Baby version. Yeah, go get that plugin because it's great. But yeah, so I feel like we did a lot of figuring that out, and I think that that's important. There's got to be kind of an acceptance for the like onboarding process is not as simple as like, here's a document of things that I like. It's like this back and forth of, if you're in our situation where you're like working together and both working on the project, whereas I'm sure that there are some people that just kind of like, here are my files, goodbye, I will see you when it's done, and like maybe that's fine. But if you're a filmmaker trying to, or a YouTuber or whatever who's been doing it yourself for a long time, and you're trying to onboard somebody, there's a period there where you need to be willing to experiment with the methods that you're going to use to make it as efficient as possible.
Yeah, and I think I was kind of curious to ask you about this because we've kind of talked about it before, but I also think that you just love editing, right? And in a lot of ways, that kind of just made the relationship, I mean, really cool, but also challenging, because there was a lot of times where, especially on my side, I was like, Dunna, like, you love this, like do it, you know, like I mean, I'm
Yeah.
so stoked to work for you and like do this. But like I think another thing I would tell people is kind of like you hinted on quite a bit back in this conversation is, you know, editing takes a ton of time, but if you genuinely really get a lot of fulfillment from it, like maybe you don't need a Jake. I don't know. Which again, I think that's
Yeah.
kind of the cool balance we have now is for a while there it was like Jake needs to work on everything no matter what. And now it's more of like a when do I need Jake because I
Yeah.
just don't have time, or
Yeah.
like, you know what? I need to do this for my soul and Jake's not working on this, right? Like that's I
Yeah.
feel like we arrived there, and
Yeah.
I think some people don't know that, and I would say try to think about that before you go searching.
Yeah, and I feel like the important or an important part of that is that we had a pretty clear communication of that
Yes.
too. Like there was never an expectation of like you were never like sitting there being like, okay, I'm waiting for my work kind of thing. Like we had very clear communication as things progressed too, because it was at first it was very much like you're gonna do every video kind of thing, and then it was like, okay, you're gonna do every video, but I'm gonna take on these pieces, and then and then it was like, okay, you're gonna do this video while I do that video, and then it was and now it's more like you said, like where it's like I'm gonna call you when I need you, basically. And part of that is for transparency for anyone watching. Part of that is because I, like you said, I love the editing, and I think that what I found out through our process, and it's something that I think I knew beforehand, but I kind of had to try it out, is that hire out the parts of the job that you don't like before you hire out the parts of the job that you do like but don't have time to do. And so now I have somebody who helps me more with my emails and the brand sponsorship things and the business side of stuff and like communications and marketing and all that kind of stuff. Essentially like a communications manager, specialist, or whatever you want to call it. But like I have somebody helping me with that side of stuff. And that's freed up a lot of time to do more of the editing. So I've been kind of calling on you a little bit less lately. But it's, as the seasons come and go, that's going to change. And I feel much more balanced
Yes.
now than when I gave you all of my editing and I sat in my email inbox for 8 hours a day. Like,
Yeah.
that didn't feel good to me.
Totally.
Like,
And when we would talk about it, I was like, I don't think this is the right solution.
yeah. It was like, it's a funny thing because I feel like it's just the common first step for a lot of people who maybe aren't in the like camera filmmaking YouTube world. Because a lot of those people aren't editors. Like they aren't
Right.
really editors. Like they're like, I'm passionate about sourdough bread.
Yes.
And I wanna talk about sourdough bread, and I edit the videos out of necessity, so that makes sense for them to hire an editor. Whereas I'm like, I love editing. I literally do tutorials about editing sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's like it's important for me to have my hands in the in the mud there and be doing a lot of this stuff myself. And yeah, so it was just finding that kind of balance that actually worked. And that was like we said, it's a very like learning opportunity, not only on your side kind of working and learning about the way that I do my stuff and that kind of thing, but like also for me, and like what's that like to work with anyone really, because like I said, I'm one man band, lone wolf, all those whatever like phrases that people use.
I think, I mean, even if you enjoy it, it's still just such a hard thing to not look at and be tempted by because it just takes so much time. I mean, like, I love it, but God, it takes forever to do anything. And it's like, yeah, it's, I can totally see where you were like, okay, I'm not sure about this, but I want to try because, man, that is just a huge chunk of time that I need to see like what that could be like. And I get it. And I think whoever's in your shoes for someone else, like these are the things to be thinking about as you're doing that, because it makes total sense. But
And I think at the time too, I was so overwhelmed with my workload that everything seemed daunting. So I think at that point in time, I probably wasn't enjoying the editing as much. Right. Because I just like was so daunted by like everything that I was doing that getting rid of editing seemed like a good idea. And like, and it did help for a while there where I was just like, oh man, I can relax. And then, yeah. So it is interesting how that balance works, the kind of internal versus external.
Totally. And again, I mean, I think we've reiterated it 1,000 times, but even on my end, like to the editors out there, check the ego at the door, you know, like you just need to be putting on that hat of doing what's right for who you're working for. And I don't know, I've always felt that way with you. Cause again, there was a couple of times like we said, where I was just like, dude, obviously I love this, but like, I don't know, is this working? Like, is this doing the right thing here? And like, I think that's, I don't know, I would tell anyone to prioritize that, because there's always more jobs to edit. There's always more things to do. And just like, don't be afraid to just try to do the right thing. So
absolutely. 100%.
We are deep at this point, and I don't know how long I get you for. Let's try to hit some spicy NLE stuff, which is funny because the one that you keep bringing up, which is, I mean, like you talked about the magnetic timeline, which we can certainly talk about. You keep bringing up the animation tool that I love in Final Cut. And again, I feel like that is like one of those things that I just feel so bad for, and was just something we were trying to work through with the workflow, which for context, like a huge chunk of our videos that is always so time consuming is just animation. Like animation, which I love, it's so fun, but like opening up Fusion and working on an animation takes so long. And I had a tool in Final Cut that I loved that was so much faster. And again, now Magic Animate V3 seems to fulfill that, which is amazing. I honestly, since using that, haven't opened up Final Cut very much, if at all, lately.
Yeah.
So I don't know what thoughts?
I think a lot of what we dealt with came down to those minute things that I was talking about earlier that like I didn't know were important to me, but are.
Yeah.
And a lot of the kind of like automatic tools that you can use don't allow for some of that stuff. So then this kind of goes back to a video that I made actually about how I do my smooth zoom in and move. And that's the thing that all of the smooth zoom plugins, or if you're someone in Resolve who likes to do dynamic zoom or whatever it's called, that kind of thing, like that's a great tool if you are willing to live within the bounds of that tool.
Yep.
But what I always wanted was like just a little outside the bounds of that tool.
Yep.
And so then I ended up like you get a little bit more manual, or you find another tool that does a little bit more. And then like I live a little bit outside the bounds of that tool. And so then I just kind of end up doing it manually a lot of the time anyway. And then to I guess kind of get in the weeds of what you were talking about there is like, you were like, hey, I have this tool in Final Cut that'll make this 100 times easier for me. And I was holding on a little bit to the fact that I was like, okay, well, I want to be able to get in here and make fixes and stuff like that in the end. But if you want to do that one graphic in Final Cut and then import it into Resolve, that's fine. And we had a funny miscommunication there, and you took a whole project and went and did it in Final Cut and then and tried to bring it back in. We had so much of a struggle trying to bring it back in and using like XMP files, and like it didn't sync up properly, and like, oh my God, it was, that one project was like, and I okayed that, just like, I feel like I okayed it, that we could like do a test on that one, and it like didn't cause any problems, like whatever, it's a YouTube video, like
it worked
it's
out.
fine. And we got it in the end, but yeah, that was an interesting one. And it was a good learning experience too, for kind of, almost what you're talking about like checking your ego at the door, except more so like checking your comfort, I guess, at the door, where it's like it's you specifically were very comfortable with this tool.
Yeah.
And doing it in Fusion, you physically could do it, but it was a little bit harder.
Yep.
And we had to try and make the decision of like, okay, do we allow Jake, is it worth it for us to allow Jake to go back to his comfort, go back to the tool that he's used to?
Yep.
Is it going to save us time? Is it going to make your life easier? Is it because you've got a busy schedule and because you're moonlighting? Like, is that going to allow you to get more work done?
Yeah.
And then we kind of tried it we tried the whole project, and that definitely didn't work.
No, did not.
And then I think we did try some bits and pieces in Final Cut, and like where it was just like kind of import export type stuff where you're like, I'm going to make a graphic in Final Cut and then export it.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember how that one kind of turned out. I don't know if maybe you just you ended up with Magic Animate and it was not necessary anymore.
Yeah, I don't remember what happened there. But well, and really again, like that was kind of another example of just like, hey, I think I have a better way to do this, which again, I would say this isn't a bad thing to do. And I was like, I'm going to show you, right? Like, hey, I'm going to go out and do it, which again, like with our time constraints was not the smartest thing to do. But I was like, I really want to prove to Dunna that I think this vision in my head is going to be like so fast. And then it just didn't work out, right? Like, it's like, okay, it was really good for like the first part. And then it got really bad at the end. And it's like, and again, that's one of those moments where
it saved 2 hours here and added 2 hours here, so it ended up being a wash anyway.
Right. And that was kind of where, like, again, what I would tell people is, you know, I tucked tail and said, hey, I apologize, I totally messed this up. This would have been just as fast in the in the whole scheme of things. And I thought I had something and I didn't. And like you said, you just got to check that ego at the door. We need to do another project, and I want to try, because that was one of, actually we didn't talk about it, that was one of those big bugs, which I need to talk with Alex about. Magic Animate didn't work great with the cloud version of DaVinci, and I'm trying to remember what the issues were, but I remember both of us being like, this does not work well for some reason, and maybe it was performance or like background rendering maybe wasn't working or something. It was just one of those things where it's like, this is not it.
Well, I think what's happened now too is that he's created the newest version of Magic Animate. You can turn everything that you're not using off in it.
Yes.
And I think what was happening before, it was just a performance thing, and it was like bogging both of our computers down. I couldn't actually check the effects that you were putting on there because it was so laggy.
No, I couldn't either.
And I think it was just because when you put an instance of Magic Animate on a clip, it was literally running everything that Magic Animate could do all at the same time, even though none of them were like doing anything. They were still like almost like they're ready to go kind of thing, like an app running in the background kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that in the newest version, I don't use it a whole lot because, like I said, I'm just anal about things and I do everything manually. But I think in the newest version, I heard him say that you can turn off everything that's not running, not like actively being used, and make it like a little bit more streamlined and run smoother.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Which is why we need to test it, because I'm curious.
There we go. We gotta get it back in there. Magic Animate Part 2 for us.
Yeah. Which again, this could totally be another one of those things where we try something and go, no, Jake, you still got to just get into Fusion, sucker.
As soon as Magic Animate gives me the ability to zoom in and then move within a clip and then choose to zoom out or not, that's when I'll really start using it, I think.
Yes.
Because that's the one thing that none of the automatic tools do yet.
Yes. No, they don't. They do not. And I'm trying to even think of how you would do that, but
you do it manually, Jake.
You do it manually.
You do it how I showed you to do it when you were like, what do you want from me? And I'm like, I'm going to make an entire tutorial and put it on YouTube, mostly just so that I can explain to Jake exactly what I want. It's going to be very, very clear.
you get out your wrenches and you start moving stuff, and
exactly.
Make sure to touch some grass somewhere in between.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, that's exactly it.
that's so good. Okay, the other spicy NLE take that you had mentioned offhand was, which I don't know that I'm that passionate about this one, but I'm curious if you've played with it more. But I'm very hot on the new fixed playhead in the edit page, and you were like, "This is dumb," and
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's kind of like the, because I think we could put the magnetic timeline in there, and I think that we could also lump this in with Patrick Sterling, who I had a couple episodes ago, said something that's really stuck with me, and maybe that's kind of the thesis statement that you and I are arriving at, is that intuitive video editing software, like he basically said, I don't believe in intuitive video editing software. Like I think that that's a lie, and that whatever you learn first is your intuitive software. And I don't know, I'm curious what you think of that, because my initial gut reaction was I don't agree with that. But lately I might be agreeing with that. I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think because so for example, when I first started editing videos, when I first started my YouTube channel, I took like some, one day online course kind of thing to learn Premiere. But the first thing that I did was went in and customized all of my shortcuts to match what they were in Pro Tools, which is my audio editing software that I had been using for 10 years at that point. So I just was like, it already feels fairly similar. Like the editing audio and editing video are pretty similar in a lot of ways. So I was like, if I can just make this even closer to what it is on my audio editing software, then great. Then like it feels intuitive again, right?
Yep.
And then it's just you getting used to like more of the file workflow, because obviously there's a lot more than just audio going on.
Right.
And then when I moved over to DaVinci, I brought all of those quick commands over. DaVinci and Premiere are fairly similar in the style of their actual editor, like editing page kind of thing.
Yeah, they're both
and their timeline.
Similar to Pro Tools.
Yeah.
It's all track-based stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's, similar to almost all audio editing software kind of thing. It's kind of, I don't know that anyone's doing anything. Well, I guess Ableton is a little bit different than that, but
oh, is it? Okay.
It still has a track editor, but you've also got the like loop launcher and stuff like that.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm getting in the weeds here.
I love it. I love it.
But yeah, so I feel like I totally get that, and I'm kind of set in my ways because I've been doing this for a long time, and every time I try and use Final Cut, and I did, like during the pandemic, I did a test of, I switched from Premiere to Final Cut for 3 full months and made every YouTube video that I was making during those three months. I never made a video about it.
Okay, I was going to say, like, how did I miss this? 3 months? Okay.
Yeah, I was the plan was to do, I was already used to Premiere, and then I was going to do 3 months on Final Cut, and then I was going to do 3 months on Resolve and see how it ended up. I got 3 days into Resolve, and I went, this is the best. I'm not talking about it anymore. I'm just moving on.
Yeah.
I didn't want to make a video about it. I knew what a giant pain in the ass that was going to be to make a video comparing the three, and I was like, it's not worth the work. I'm just going to start making videos about Resolve. I'm going to make I switched to Resolve video, but that was about as much as it got. I don't think I really made anything on Final Cut. But yeah, I was in there. I gave it
for 3 months then.
Yeah, I gave it a full chance. And,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I wasn't into it. I couldn't. I loved how snappy it was, but really, that's just all the background rendering that's automatically set up in there that they do such a good job with.
Yeah.
It's not because the program itself runs any snappier. It's that the default settings are optimized so well for creating what is essentially proxies or cache files.
Yep.
That's why Final Cut runs so well. So if you set up your Resolve in a smart way, it can basically do the same thing. And so then that was why I felt like Resolve had all of the powerful and minute editing things that I got from Premiere, but it had the snappiness of Final Cut, and I was like, okay, it's over. That's it, kind of thing.
For sure. And that all has just gotten better. Like, I think that the render cache kind of was a little dorky for a while, and it seems to be really good with this latest version, in that like it knows when it's not going to be able to play stuff back and can render it. You can set it up that way. And the file sizes are itty bitty. So it's like not a huge inconvenience even on storage space. And then just in general, the optimization is like general playback and resolve is better than Final Cut in my experience on my M2 Max. Like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, as in terms of the magnetic timeline, or the what do you call it? The fixed playhead thing. I've been playing around with it a little bit more lately. I find it a little frustrating.
It's so good until like two little things, which I think you were just about to say, and I cut you off.
Yeah. No, that's okay. Yeah, it's like I'm so used to moving my playhead with a single click.
Yes.
Right? So I can see, so I read the audio waveforms a lot to know where I am, or I look at the starts and ends of clips, and then it's like a single click to get over there, and I see the frame that I want to see, and now all of a sudden it's a full scroll.
Yep.
And I have to wait for it to get over there, and so it's a slower process, and it slows me down a lot. Now, I want to put that with a grain of salt, because like I've only been using it for whatever, a week or two kind of thing. So like,
I think I agree with you though.
Yeah.
Because I think my perfect version of my perfect version is just put the secondary playhead in, which I know, like I sound like such a broken record, but like I really think Resolve could have a toggleable version of that, so that like if you really hated it, you could just turn it off. But if you wanted it, like CapCut has it, Final Cut has it, and CapCut's, well, both of them you can turn on and off. Like you can even turn it off in Final Cut. So I don't know why they can't do it in Resolve. I feel like they should be able to, but with what we have today, my perfect version would be fixed playhead, but then I could click up in that bar and go somewhere. But then it still moves everything to be in the middle. Because I kind of like how it keeps me focused for the most part in the middle. I didn't realize how much the jarring of like scrolling the timeline in chunks as you're watching something kind of takes you out of certain stuff. I don't know.
It's so interesting. I feel like that, and I don't know if this is just so for those who watch my channel, you may recognize this guy,
the red ball.
So this is my Kensington Expert mouse, and someone is calling me several times. Voicemail.
Is everyone alive?
Everyone, it's like a weird number I don't recognize. Hopefully everybody's all right. So anyway, this is my Kensington Expert mouse, and it's got 4 buttons around here. It's got the scroll wheel, and then it's the trackball. So it you move that instead of moving it, which one is really great for my wrist because I don't have to move my arm at all. It's just finger action. But also 2 of these buttons I have customized to zoom in and zoom out my timeline.
Yeah.
So when I want to move my timeline, it is so second nature to me to zoom out like once or twice so that I can see more of the timeline. And then the scroll is so much quicker. So it's almost like zoom out so that there's more of the timeline is compressed. And then when I scroll, I'm scrolling so much further, and then zoom back in where I want to see it. And that doesn't translate really well with the fixed playhead.
No, it doesn't. It does not. Yeah. No,
especially because as you scroll, the playhead scrolls kind of thing. So it's like I'm doing a lot of scrolling back and forth, and I can move my whole timeline. Like if I need to like be at the start and then go to the end of the timeline, it's like click, click, scroll there. I'm at the end of the timeline. Like you can't do that with fixed playhead. Like you're waiting for it to scroll all the way to the end. So again, I've only been trying out the fixed playhead on and off for a couple of weeks. So there's like a grain of salt to be taken with that, but or take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, I do still just like find it so much easier to be able to click. And I think that, like you said, that there is a solution for that where you can kind of get the best of both worlds. I think honestly, even if you allowed it to be clickable in that top bar, where the playhead kind of exists, like where I currently click to move my playhead.
Yeah.
If you made the fixed timeline but allowed me to click up there to move my playhead and then the whole thing shifted over so it's still fixed,
Yeah.
that would be fine. But right now you click up there and nothing happens.
Right. You still have to drag up there, which is
You still have to
a
drag it over.
because you might as well just drag.
It's literally a drag. The dad puns.
There's the dad pun.
You made
of
it.
the
How
day.
long have we been recording for before one of those came out?
An impressive amount of time.
Yeah, you have been very patient, my friend.
No, I totally agree. And I think maybe that's my takeaway, which totally fits in with this whole, because, and I think you were part of that stuck with me, which is that like when I talked with you about it, like the magnetic timeline's great, which again, you never even mentioned when we were talking about that you'd used it for 3 months. So I kind of thought like, he doesn't know what he's
like,
talking
he doesn't
about.
know.
Like he hasn't actually tried it. Like, I feel like it's like, dude, just try it. It's like, okay, no, you did. And at the end of the day, it just kind of proves that point of like, to those of you who are using Final Cut and think it is intuitive, there's a lot of nice things there, but like it's all just preference. And same thing with this fixed playhead. Like I guess my message here is like I hope Resolve just keeps giving us more ways to edit and interact, which this is a great example. It's like, hey, this was in the cut page, but we can put it in the edit page for people who like it, and I like it so far. Like, it's not perfect, but like more of that is better because it just allows people to use tools how they want to use them.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have been shutting up a whole lot about the magnetic timeline lately because I just feel like I don't think it's actually a good argument, which goes back to that intuitive point, which is that it is good, but it's not necessarily better, which is something you had always told me. You're like, I get it, but like it's still kind of just a different way to do the same thing. And I was like, no, it's not. And now I'm like,
and I like to play it up. Like in our conversations, I'll play it up a little bit and be very hyperbolic, and I'll say that magnetic timeline is stupid. Like anyone who uses it is dumb. But like that's not how I actually feel. I'm just like, it's like if that's what you learned. I mean, to go back to kind of Patrick's point there, it's like if that's the way that you learned it, then that is your as close as you're going to get to an intuitive thing. Like it's not. And then, like, I'm sure you could make the argument that, like, maybe the majority of people's brains work in a certain, like, maybe there is some kind of, like, quote unquote normal, like where the majority of people would work in a certain way. But, like, who cares? Like, if it works better for you, then it works better for you. And that's great. It's very not handy for YouTube. If you're a YouTuber and you want to, like, have the algorithm work in favor of you. You just want to say like, this is the best and everything else is dumb and here's why. And I try my best to not do that in my YouTube videos if I can. And I'm just like, here are the options, and like it can be A or B, and like do what's best for you. And it's not sexy, but it's the truth.
Yeah, you and I definitely suffer from shouting at the top of the hill, do whatever is the best for you, because then everyone's like, well, that's super boring.
Yeah. But it's not very clickable.
It's the truth. No, I say that all the time because I love both. I think both are amazing. I've never used Premiere, mostly because I just never wanted to pay the money for it and have never needed to. I just... more and more lately, this has probably been the biggest stretch where I've not touched Final Cut in a minute because Resolve is really, really doing what I need it to do. But do what works. Do what works for you. And it's just, we live in an amazing time where the tools are so stupidly fantastic. So
the one thing, there's literally one thing that I miss from Adobe Premiere.
Ooh.
And that is being able to customize your interface.
Yeah.
As someone who has been making a lot more vertical content.
Yes.
Seeing a vertical viewer on DaVinci Resolve is not user friendly.
No. You either need it to be microscopic to see your timeline, or you need it to be big and then you can't see your timeline.
Exactly. And so in Premiere, you can just move your viewer over off to the right side and have a screen width full viewer kind of thing. So that would be if DaVinci Resolve, if Blackmagic is listening, that's the next thing that I want.
Yep.
You can call it the 19.DUNNA beta and add that in for me.
Yeah. Which also I don't think would be too hard, where it's like, could you just shoot the viewer to somewhere and like,
yeah,
just let it be? Because like I've been rocking a vertical monitor lately, which I love because I chunk out like my Finder windows or even notes. Like it's just like, I can't believe I haven't done this sooner, but for vertical content, if I could just throw a viewer over there, that'd be so nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, or yeah, like even if they don't want to give us like complete control over like in Premiere, you literally are just dragging around like the windows wherever you want them, and that can get a little hectic and messy and hard to keep track of. And I think maybe that's why other programs don't do it.
Yeah.
But I feel like if there was like another option for like vertical viewer, like setup or whatever, where it moved your effects and your nodes to the middle, where it can be horizontal, and that's fine. And then on the right side, you've got like a more vertical viewer kind of setup. Like if that was just like another option, I would use it every day.
That literally what you just described sounds like the perfect option. And yeah, 19 DUNNA
Blackmagic.
beta.
Call me.
Yeah, call DUNNA. He's got the ideas here. Sweet, man. Well, hey, DUNNA, dude, thank you so much for coming on the show. I don't even know how to wrap this up other than just big smiles, big dad hugs, and thank you for giving me some of your time today. I think people are going to find this really valuable. And for anyone who doesn't know who you are, where can we find you? I'm always wanting more DUNNA fans, which I guess is kind of selfish because there's a little bit of a Jake fan there, but more DUNNA fans in the world.
Yeah, man. I mean, thanks for having me. And yeah, if anyone wants to find me, it's just DUNNA did it pretty much everywhere. YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, X, Threads, whatever else. I have accounts everywhere. I pretty much just use Instagram and YouTube though. So find me there and say hi.
Sweet, man. Well, hey, thank you so much. And I will talk with you later, I'm sure. You know, this is a weird goodbye because it's not probably for a very long time.
Yeah, I'll probably text you later today. Yes.
Sweet, man. Thank you.
All right. Later, dude.
Later. All right. Red button.
We did it. Red button.
Red button.